Moments after celebrating the new year, a group of Coptic Christians left Saints Church in Alexandria, Egypt. What the crowd didn't know was that nearby in a parked car, the clock was ticking. A car bomb sent ball bearings, nails, and shrapnel flying into the crowd. More than 21 people were killed and close to 100 wounded. The Egyptian government immediately blamed the attack on foreigners. But Maher Riscala doubts that.
Al-Qaeda usually claim responsibility for their actions. They did not. So we think it is within Egypt.
Riscala is the Ontario president of the Canadian Coptic Association. The group raises awareness about violence against Christians in Egypt.
It's usually happen every year. It happens all the time. Except the car bomb is the first of its kind.
The bombing comes almost 1 year to the day of another attack that killed 8 people at a church in the town of Nagamadi. Coptic Christians make up an estimated 10% of the Egyptian population. For decades, Riscala says, Christians and Muslims have lived in relative peace, and most still do.
We don't live in a separate area. We live together in the same building, you see, mix. So we live together. We always have a good relationship as neighbor, friend.
But the rise of extremism in parts of Egypt since the 1970s has led to increased sectarian violence against Christians.
That goes back to, as you said, 30 years ago, when the government of Egypt switched the constitution, adding Article 2. So what that means is switching the country from autocratic system to theocratic, undeclared theocratic system of government.
With that, he says, came the rise of an extremist sect of Islam called Wahhabism.
Wahhabi sect of Islam is no tolerance to anyone. Alexandria in the 50s and before that was a metropolitan city, has a multicultural of Jewish, Christian. We have also different nationality. Greek, Armenian, Italian, they're all living together. Now the thing has changed.
And the bombing in Alexandria, Riscala says, brought Egypt's growing sectarian tension center stage.
It's the second largest city and also a tourist attraction. It happened in Alexandria and one of the biggest church in Alexandria. So that's why it attracts the attention of the media, nationally and internationally.
One group that's keeping a close eye on events is the Coptic diaspora. In Toronto, the English and Arabic newspaper Al-Ahram Al-Jadid is a source for that news. Rafat Gindi is chief editor.
It is dedicated and committed to the Coptic issue, to make awareness of for all of the Copts from coast to coast with what's going on with their brethren in Egypt.
Within days of the Alexandria bombing, the Coptic community began to raise awareness and organize protests.
So we are talking to the media, we are talking to the politicians, we are doing everything what we can. We are collecting money to send it to the needy over there, and we are collecting money to send those who were affected with that bomb.
For Greg Musselman, the level of media attention the bombing has received is unorthodox. When it comes to persecution against Christians, he says it often goes unnoticed and unreported.
A lot of the times it's suppressed. And so even organizations like ours, when we come up with these stories, well, no, those are just isolated stories.
Musselman travels the world documenting persecution for the Voice of the Martyrs Canada. The organization advocates and supports persecuted Christians around the globe.
Most of the Christians that are in Egypt are Coptic. There are, of course, some Protestant evangelicals as well, and some Catholics, but for the most part, the Christians in Egypt are Coptic. The Coptic Christians would be the Orthodox Christians, and their history goes right back to the time of Jesus. And at one time, of course, in Egypt, Christians were the predominant religion in that country up until about the 7th century when the Islamic invasion came, and they have since that point been in the minority.
And while the Egyptian constitution states there is religious freedom, it's not quite what you'd think, he says.
Or if it was a Coptic wanting to become a Muslim, they're free to do that. But to go the other way, you can't do that. You can't leave Islam and join the Coptic church or the Baptist church or an evangelical church or Presbyterian church. It's not permitted in their society.
All Egyptians, says Musselman, must carry identity cards which bear both the name and religion of the cardholder, which can make them easy targets for discrimination.
And that's how you differentiate between somebody who's a Muslim and a Christian. And if they do see the card says Christian, they can refuse them a job, they can refuse to serve them, they can not allow them to go into the university or college so they can further their education.
And for Muslims who do convert, Musselman says attempting to have their religion changed on their ID card is difficult and potentially dangerous.
Now, there a well-known case, and it's not the only one, but it's the most prominent, Christian by the name of Muhammad Hagazi, an Islamic man that converted to Christianity. And as a Christian, he said, I want to have my identity card changed to say Christian. And so in Muhammad Hagazi's case, it caused quite a stir in the media, where you had Islamic leaders coming out and saying this man must be insane, and his own father said he would kill him.
Building codes in Egypt have also been a source of contention for the country's Christians. A rule from the days of the Ottoman Empire, known as the Hamayuni Decree, required non-Muslims to have building permits and repairs approved by the president. In 2005, a new presidential law gave Egypt's governors the power to approve or deny permits for existing churches. And although intended to level the playing field, it hasn't, says Musselman, and it serves a purpose.
Well, it is to stop the growth of the church.
Ironically, he says, it's had the opposite effect.
There has been a growth in the church. Not just a church that is passive and sitting back, but they're becoming more passionate about sharing their faith in Jesus Christ.
But the violence isn't always religious. Musselman says Egypt's social and economic problems make minority Christians easy scapegoats.
Things like, jobs. People will use the fact that, Christians are, wanting to have professional jobs and get education, and then using religion to put people down.
Though they face harassment and threats, he says, both Christians and Muslims living in Egypt have had enough and are speaking out against the violence.
We've met many wonderful Christians there that are working underground. We've met lawyers, those that are, trying to approach it from a legal standpoint. Sometimes the voices of more reason are drowned out by more of the militant voices.
Half a world away in Ontario, Meher Riskala and Rafat Gindi aren't immune to the threats facing many Copts in Egypt. In October, their names, addresses, and phone numbers appeared on an al-Qaeda-affiliated website, along with the names and in some cases pictures of 98 other Canadians of Egyptian and Middle Eastern descent.
That was emailed to me from a friend of mine in Montreal who got it from his friend in Egypt. So right away I called CSIS in Ottawa.
It came through the email from my friends. I found my name and my picture.
Sit.
Despite the threat, after meeting with Canadian intelligence officials, they're not worried.
No, I'm not fear. I don't have fear now.
We are Christians. We know that not a single bird will drop from the tree without the consent of our Father in heaven.
For these men, it's a sign they're doing something right.
We are in a luxury place here. We are in comfort here. We have the whole freedom, but we cannot let our people suffer like that, and we are watching them and said, oh, we are far away from you.
Though the attacks in Egypt against Christians have become progressively more violent in the last few decades, Riskala and Gindi are optimistic.
Everybody loves freedom. Everybody wants to be free to talk, free to move, but it's not offered to the people. What we need from the Canadian government or Canadian people to support us.
Where is equality? Where is the whole world is doing what they are doing? Try to put pressure on the Canadian government, or not to put pressure, to ask the Canadian government to adopt the Coptic issue. And this is really, we will appreciate if everybody will call Cannon, or we will call Jason Kenney or Stephen Harper or Michael Ignatieff to tell him, please do something for the Coptic issue.
The Canadian Coptic Association is planning a protest on February 5th in Toronto. In the meantime, Coptic communities around the world are moving forward, determined to shine a light on an often forgotten community increasingly at risk of dying because of their faith. In Toronto, Ontario, Bridget Entry, 100 Huntley Street.